Welcome everyone. This is your host, Tommy Ryan of Slightly Twisted Games. I'm here with Mark. He's off to the left. We're going to give you a little playthrough of Glory. As you can see, we already have the play area set up. We have our piles of sorcery, might, and of course the glorious Glory. I have chosen my champion, Treehugger the Lumberjack Druid. Mark will be playing as Stevie the Blind Ranger. Stevie starts with 5 might and 2 sorcery. Treehugger, 4 might, 3 sorcery. Over here we have already shuffled the decks of minions, elites, and lords. You'll notice the lords have 5 glory tokens on them. That's because the lords will not be put into play. Over here are the spells, and that's really all we need to get started. So then we'll go ahead and populate the elites. There are 2 players, so we're going to be placing 3 elites. Looks like we've got a cosplayer, a warband, and the Omega Rho Kappa Pit. The first one that came out was our cosplayer, so she is the active elite. So as it shows, the elf elite states that devoting other elves requires 1 additional might and 1 additional sorcery. If you have any elf minions or even lords or other elites, they'll cost more. We'll get into voting in a little bit. Now for the minions to come out: Goblin Rush, Cubicle Zombie, Troll, and a Dire Emergency Wolf. It's time for the first turn. We determine play order first by whoever has the most glory, no one, then who has the most sorcery, and that would be Treehugger. So I will take the first turn. Treehugger is going to combat something because he wants some glory all for himself. And he thinks that the best thing to go after is the Goblin Rush. So I'm going to spend 3 might plus 1 sorcery. When you combat, you gain the glory. So this defeats the minion, placing him in the discard pile. And then I grab a glory for myself. And now the play passes to Mark. Mark has decided he is going to spend 4 might to defeat the Dire Emergency Wolf. That will gain him 1 glory, and his turn is done. Play now passes back to me. There's nothing really that I can do, so I will choose to bide my time. At this point, I receive the boon of 3 might and 3 sorcery. Play now passes to Mark. Mark will also bide, and that concludes the play sequence of turn number 1. And now we're to the kingdom sequence. The first thing is we check and see if there are no glory tokens on the Lord's deck. There are actually 5, so I will remove 1. Now the elites get repopulated. They're still where they were. Now the minions get populated to the number of players times 2, bringing us up to 4. Now you'll notice these 2 are elf characters, so they would cost more to devote because of the elf elite cosplayer. It's at this point that we refresh. We're back to the play sequence, and we have actually a very interesting situation here. We need to figure out who goes first. First we look at glory. We each have 1. Now we're going to look at sorcery. Mark has 5. I also have 5. Mark has 4 might. I also have 4 might. So you can't see Mark, but he's 6'5" and I'm 5'8". So shortness is what takes the first turn in this case. I do have an option now to buy spells. I'm not going to do it on this turn, but it will become important soon. Since I'm going first, I'm going to look out here, look at the resources I have available, and I am actually going to go ahead and kill this troll, and that will gain me another glorious glory. Mark chooses to bide immediately, gaining his 3 and 3. Now, if I choose to go again, I would let him collect a resource of his choice. However, I don't have any big plans, so I also will bide, and we move again to the kingdom sequence. We take a glory off of the Lord's deck, repopulate the elites, repopulate the minions, everybody's favorite, the bear in the woods, and then now is when we refresh our fatigued cards, and then we return to the play sequence. So first we look at glory, and that already tells us that I'm going to go first. I'm going to show us the first devotion of a creature. So that's 5 might, 3 sorcery, and 2 glory. Brings this raiding party down onto my team. And now the next time I bide, I'll get not just the boon of Treehugger, but also the boon of the raiding party. It now passes to Mark. You're actually going to kill her. Okay. She is killed. Mark actually has the option to place this on one of the remaining elites. You'll note note, this actually says other orcs within the kingdom may not be devoted. So I got my raiding party just in the nick of time. I choose to bide, which gains me now 6 total might and 4 total sorcery because of my additional resource production. Play passes to Mark, who also will choose to bide. Since all players are biding, we're moving back to the kingdom sequence. There's still glory on the lords, so a glory comes off. The elite get repopulated. We now have a griffin carpet bomber. And then we have the duke. Then we check for victory. No. We refresh our fatigue cards, and we're coming back to the play sequence. In turn order, we see is definitely Mark here. Then Mark has a choice to purchase some spells. He's going to pass. I am actually going to choose to purchase spells. They cost a total of 3 resources each. Now Mark isn't allowed to see these, but these are the spells that I have. And Mark has chosen to devote the Duke. I am going to play an Employee of the Month card. Employee of the Month says collect might or sorcery totaling one of your devoted minion or elite's sorcery values. So sorcery value of 3 is what I will gain, and I will decide to take that amount in sorcery, and then I will pass play to Mark. Mark bides, and that will yield him an even 5 and 5. And then because I have these additional resources, I will now choose to combat an elf, and that will yield me to glory. Play now passes to Mark, and since Mark is already biding when it's his turn, Mark gets a resource of his choice. Then it comes to me. I choose that now is a good time for me to bide as well, and we are moving to the kingdom sequence. Welcome back. A couple of turns have passed, and we are just now flipping to the kingdom sequence, and you'll note we no longer have any glory left on the Lord's deck. So a few things are going to happen. First off, we flip over our first Lord. There will be 2 Lords who come into play because there are 2 players. We immediately enforce the Orc Lord's active text, which says all players discard 1 might per devoted minion, 1 might and 1 sorcery per devoted elite. I'm losing 1, and Mark is losing 2 because nobody's snagged an elite yet. And then we also each draw 1 spell because of the fact that the Lord is revealed for the first time. Now, the elite's domain is repopulated, and the minions are fine. We will check for victory. We will refresh our fatigue cards, and we will return back to the play sequence. I have 4 glory. Mark has 3. I will go first, and I am going to go ahead and take all 4 of my glory, 7, and that is going to allow me to take this elite. Now, if I can get my hands on Broger and another minion, I could be in really good shape. I'm going to choose where to place this. I'm going to choose Camelot. The play will now pass to Mark. Mark is going to use his spell to fatigue my guy. I'm also, however, going to regurgitate that. Mark, he's going to gain 5 and 3. I am going to take the boon of the Duke. Plays back to me, so I'm going to go ahead and kill myself a troll, gaining me a glory. Okay, Broger will die, meaning that the elf will affect us next turn. Mark will gain 5 glory. And play comes back to me. I am not giving up my hopes. Grab myself a Goblin Rush. Play passes to Mark. I also will now choose to bide. And we move to Kingdom Sequence. Welcome back. You will see that we are now into the end game. Mark at 18 glory is perched to potentially get to 20 glory. The Duke was killed by an arena victory on my part. You can see we've actually cycled back through the lords again. Broger is back out along with the king, the human lord. We have just finished up our last kingdom sequence. We now know turn order goes to Mark. If Mark gets to 20 glory, even if I should devote Broger, I would lose because the ultimate tiebreaker is glory. So Mark will go first, but it is now the time that we would play beginning of turn spells. Mark passes his beginning of turn spells, but I will play a team building retreat, which says I choose the player, and his next action must be to bide his time. However, Mark has a response, which is a Nerd Rage, meaning that only the spell's affinity takes effect. But since I also have a Nerd Rage, I can Nerd Rage his Nerd Rage, which means the team building retreat will still take effect. Mark must bide, but he will be unable to act. Now play passes to me by spending 9 sorcery, 11 might, and 5 glory to devote Broger the Ogre. Mark, who is already biding, can at best collect an additional resource. I now have no reason not to bide. As we go through the kingdom sequence, we'll repopulate everything. When we get to step 5, where we check for victory, we'll note that because of the boon of Broger the Ogre, that I, with 1 Orc Elite and 2 Orc Minions, am able to declare victory. Because I played the card that stopped Mark from getting those last 2 glory, I do win the game. Mark, great game. Thank you for playing, and thank you for watching. Go and be glorious.